Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to Natter with Nilan. Today, I'm going to be chatting to Steve Swindon, the co-founder of Tape Community Music and Film and host of the Screen Presence podcast. And here he is now. Steve, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate your time. First and foremost, how are you? We are living in crazy times, and yeah, I'm not quite sure how everyone is doing in their own homes and stuff. So how are you?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me along, Nilan. It's
Very
good
welcome.
to have a chance to chat with you. Well, personally speaking, I ran my own business for a long time, working from home. So being sat at my desk in my spare room is something I'm incredibly familiar with. So it didn't feel like too much of a step into the unknown when lockdown happened. I was furloughed for a while, so I was able to be get do the homeschooling with my little boy, and all of that was fine, and being in North Wales and being able to kind of get into fresh air safely and easily, was I feel really lucky that my situation is certainly nowhere near as difficult as it is for other people, within my own town. My wife works within education and was part of the team responding to COVID, and continues to,
Oh,
in
wow.
terms of provision for young people within schools, and particularly around special educational provision. So, it's getting lots of stories of, sort of situations that people are sort of dealing with. So I've it kind of puts into perspective where you're at, but nonetheless, trying to run a charity and coming out of furlough and stepping back into that role, and trying to maintain connections for people, and realizing or being reminded of how important the charity is for people in terms of connection and combating isolation, and having opportunities to be creative, in a meaningful way. Obviously, like it is for everybody, the stuff that's been difficult is the same, missing people, being disconnected from people that you want to stay close with. But I'm remaining ever hopeful and optimistic that we're not too far away from being able to be back with our loved ones properly again.
Yeah, I'm very much on that optimism path. There was a point last year where I was just like, God, this is never going to end, is it? But I think we're back on that trajectory now. So you mentioned the charity. You're the co-founder of Tape. Can you speak a little bit about the work that Tape is involved in? Because obviously I've seen the various different things that you guys do, and I'm just astounded by the range of it, really. Yeah, but can you talk a little bit about the stuff that they do?
Yeah, so Tape is 13 years old this year, and the sort of ethos for what we do has been the same since the first day that we opened the doors, really, and that's to support whatever creative ideas people come to the door with. So we don't necessarily prescribe what we do. It's we try as much as we possibly can to be entirely responsive to the ideas that people have, or the interests that people have. So over the years, that's got us into some really some very diverse situations with sort of creative interests that people have. But there's a range of things that are quite common. So we do a lot of music, we do a lot of stuff with visual arts. Filmmaking has become something that's become more prevalent over the years, and we're really lucky. We're really well resourced over sort of nearly 13 years of existence. We've been able to develop our kit and our building, and bit by bit. So we've got lots of nice kit. We've got a nice studio, stage, cinema, and those things are all really nice. So we're really fortunate in that respect. To be able to respond to what people's interests might be, with a timetable of activities when we're open, that supports people of all ages, from, you know, kind of youth provisions to working with people, with adults, because it's, you know, it's all ages. And then we get pieces of commissioned work, which is how you and I came to be in contact with one another, developing projects with partner organisations. But like I say, film is something that we've increasingly supported up to sort of 2016 when we finished our first feature, and we're in post with our second feature film. Yeah, I could talk about that all day, but it's a really broad range of things. But essentially, it's about what do the people who come to the door want to do, and how can we make those opportunities, how can we present those opportunities as inclusively as possible?
I mean, like I said, you guys are doing fantastic work. One of the new things that you guys are doing, the new journey that you're embarking on, is the Screen Presence podcast. I think the film and TV industry has, you know, it's a wonderful place to work, but there are many issues sort of behind the scenes that many people might not be aware of. I think with the Screen Presence podcast, sort of the aim is to, you know, bring light to a lot of that. But first and foremost, is to have that conversation. And I think whenever you want to solve a problem or make things better, it starts with a conversation. Do you think it was the necessity to have honest, sometimes uncomfortable conversations that led to you creating the Screen Presence podcast? And what for you are the aims for it going forward?
Well, the sort of catalyst for it was I went along to an event, an industry event that was looking at kind of celebrating work that had been going on recently within film and TV, amongst a group of, you know, people from within the industry, to sort of celebrate how people have been working differently and trying to increase representation and opportunities for a wider group of people, more representative of our communities. And you know, I sat in that room, and there were some things that people were discussing that were really good and exciting, and it wasn't a wholly successful event. There were some things that people got you know, just entirely missed, which was a bit kind of worrying at an event like that. But for the most part, it was getting to hear from people who had broken some new ground or shifted their ways of working in order to be more supportive and inclusive. But to me, going away from that event on the train, it felt like, well, if you weren't there, how would you know? And if you don't have examples of that work apparent to people, well, that's also, you know, really dispiriting to those folks who need those messages that no, things are changing, people are trying to do things differently. And I think, you know, positive examples and people getting to talk about their work using their own language and their own experiences is really motivating as well. And so that was the kind of catalyst for it. So on that train journey home, I sort of sketched out an idea to, well, what if we got each of those speakers onto a podcast to talk about what they did, what they've done. And there was a couple of people, but one in particular, Kat Marshall from Warp Films, who was one of the exec producers on the feature film of Everybody's Talking About Jamie, and how she talked about how they'd worked to support discussion and around gender identity. And they did some brilliant work. And I sat thinking, well, there's just some really simple takeaway stuff that more than the people who are the couple of hundred people who are in that room should be hearing. You know, they should be going out to a much wider audience. How can we do that? So that was, you know, thinking about it in practical terms of what one episode might be like, and then just thinking about, from my own experience, knowing of people who are doing things differently across all different sorts of themes. So that was the catalyst for it, really. And I think when I first spoke to your colleague Mel about it, we had a really great conversation and talked for quite a while about, you know, enough with the talking.
Yeah.
let's do some stuff. But I think that takes some encouragement as well. And I think we both came away from the conversation saying, well, we could develop a library of conversations that people have got some practical advice and stuff they can take away into their own work, that's presented in a way that isn't judgmental. It isn't finger pointing. It is about, these guys did this and it was great, and actually you could do that too. So that's where it all sort of stemmed from, really. And I'm pleased to say that from we're at the end of post-production pretty much with the first 6 episodes, and the idea has come to fruition, and it seems to really be working. And I suppose the other aspect to it as well is that what we're encouraging people to do through the podcast, we're also doing through the making of the podcast. So we're the delivery of the podcast is being done through a project at Tape. So we have a group of people who've come together who have an interest in all sorts of different kind of media projects, and that's the group of people who are working on the post-production and the editing and the launch and all different aspects of getting that podcast over the line and out into the world. That's the group of people who are doing it. So it's a live brief for those people. So they're getting training in order to support their own podcasts and ideas that they've got. In fact, it's already done that. There's a couple of people who are already embarking upon their own work as a result of it, or have found confidence to try new things as a result of coming and being part of that project. So it's really layered. It's a really dynamic project, and the music for the podcast has been done by through a project at Tape, and the delivery of the actual interviews. We're speaking. I have a co-host for every episode, so that's somebody who has an awareness and an experience of the subject, the theme for the show, and really it's about supporting them to lead the conversation, really, and in a way that I can't, and that's also worked really well. So it's been a real success. I can't wait for people to hear it.
Absolutely. At this moment in time, this might be different by the time this video comes out. The introduction episode is out of the Screen Presence podcast. Subsequent episodes might be available by the time this video comes out. A little disclaimer there. The introduction episode is currently out now. It's fantastic. I would recommend everyone go out and listen to it. I'll put the links in the description below, so you guys can head straight there. Not only is it great to listen to, but I personally know it's great because I was in it. I was featured in it, and I had a great time being involved in that. I think we had a fantastic conversation. I think that the whole of the BFI inclusion team really enjoyed it. So Jen, Mel, Yare, we really enjoyed the sort of structure that you put in place and the way you mixed it all up and had all of our answers to the various discussions all blended in. Can I ask you about how BFI got involved with supporting the podcast?
Yeah, we when the head of inclusion, Jen, first came into post, I sent her a message to say congratulations on getting your job. I just spotted it that was happening, and I was really excited that there was somebody coming into post to do that sort of work. So I sent her a message to say congratulations and introduced her to the work of Tape and talked about our first feature film, British Winters. And then fast forward a few months and we brought the film to the BFI HQ, to a screening room, and screened it to some folks from the inclusion team. But in true Tape style, we reached out to to a load of other people that we invited along to the screening so that they could come to a screening for the first time. So it was folks from Arts Emergency and from some other partner organisations who brought some aspirant filmmakers along to watch our film, hear about how it was made, but also get to come into the BFI and sit in the screening room. And so there was it was an absolutely bloody terrifying experience, but it was also a really positive one, you know, sitting in that room and introducing it. And then Jen did a really nice introduction that just filled me with optimism and a real desire to sort of develop our relationship, you know, between TAPE and the BFI, because, you know, we're a tiny little charity in North Wales, but we've got some lofty ideas and we're kind of punching above our weight and in some ways, and that's and we don't necessarily tend to bang the drum very hard for ourselves because we're just too busy getting on with stuff. But to have a link to the BFI around the work that people were looking to do with us, crucially, was really important. So when this podcast idea came together, initially I went to the people who put the event on in Leeds, and that you know, it wasn't something they were interested in, and that just felt like the courteous thing to do. And in many ways, I'm really glad that didn't stick with them, because the perfect home for it is with the inclusion team and with the BFI. I mean, that would have been, you know, is my first choice, and you know, it's proven to be the case. You know, the working with yourself, Nilan, and having conversations with you and getting to know you and how driven you are and passionate you are about the subject that we're kind of exploring with the podcast and the work we're doing has been really great. And
thank you, I appreciate that.
No, not at all. And going to your team and pitching this idea, and to be met with the same sort of enthusiasm as there was behind the idea itself, was just, that's just so great. I mean, I only ever really want to work with people who are enthusiastic, who meet, you know, if you're not interested, that's totally cool. I'm not going to try and convince anyone of anything, but if somebody is enthusiastic, I mean, that's the really good stuff. You know, you're onto a winner there, even if it doesn't come to fruition. You know, having those sorts of enthusiastic conversations where you're able to move an idea on, or find like-minded folks. You need that sort of encouragement, and
absolutely.
And actually that's what we do at TAPE. You know, and someone comes to the door, even if it's an idea I don't know anything about, you know. If someone's comes to, I really want to make this comic book about something. Like, I'm not a big comic book guy, but if you come and you share your idea, that's going to be met with 100% enthusiasm, because that can just take you forward, and that actually means a great deal to someone. So to have that experience mirrored in my contact with the BFI and working with you guys is worth a huge amount, actually.
Yeah, it's passion, isn't it? I think passion is infectious, and yeah, well, like, as you said, when you are around and speak to and work with like-minded people, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like you're doing something really, really great together. So going forward with the Screen Presence podcast, there's going to be 6 episodes in this first series, I believe. You are going to be discussing a lot of big topics with the aim of potentially, you know, making big changes in the screen industries. I know that you're going to be talking about neurodiversity, disability, gender identity, you know, filmmaking for people from underrepresented backgrounds, and also mental health. So, you know, from my point of view, when you know, as I said earlier, when talking about big issues, big topics, you know, like I said, it first starts with a conversation. And in this industry, things that require a lot, so whether it's resources, money, exposure, they tend to take a bit of time, and they tend to take a bit of persuading. Are there little things that can be done that you would like to see that can help in the various areas that you're going to be exploring throughout this first series that can be done sort of now, that can positively impact the people that, you know, would be affected most by it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what sits at the heart of the podcast, is that you get to the end of an episode and, you know, there's some takeaways that you can immediately adopt or explore in your own working, and I think that's how I wouldn't feel. I don't think a short, you know, kind of half-hour podcast is the right sort of ground for like long form conversations about these subjects. I don't think I'm the right person to helm that, and I also think that that kind of starts to fall into the realms of the theoretical again, when it becomes too long form, and that's what we wanted to try and avoid. So absolutely, having you know, giving people ideas and practical advice from people that have already done some of the heavy lifting is exactly what the show is all about, and also sort of exposure to people working in different ways. I mean, the episode with Sheridan from Running Films, it's really fascinating. And they're all really fascinating episodes, but working in North Wales, where there are certainly fewer people coming through our doors who are from Black and minority ethnic communities. You know, my experience of providing sort of support in that to that group of people is less than Sheridan. So I was learning. Speaking to Sheridan was really great because I got to have the conversation and I got to listen to somebody's experience. And I think, and the same with, you know, maybe people don't have an opportunity to work alongside somebody who identifies as being neurodiverse, who has an autism diagnosis, and thinking about considerations of supporting people differently or running a project differently to support someone to be part of it. And then you get to meet somebody like Jeff, who's my co-host in that episode, who absolutely confounds expectation in the way that that working with creative people does. It's a really positive experience, and I think that's probably part of the takeaway as well, is you get to sit and have a conversation or listen to a conversation, be informed by some perspectives that maybe you don't get a chance to explore very often, especially if you're really busy with your production and oh, I can't do that, I haven't got time for that, you know. And there's the neurodiversity one's particularly interesting with, you know, the release of Music, Sia's film coming out, and the storm of negativity around that film and the way that it's been conducted. It seems, I haven't explored it too greatly, but I've read some articles, and it seems like it'll be an interesting case study. It'd be quite nice to get her on the podcast, actually. talk to her about it. Maybe.
The Screen Presence podcast is heavily centered around inclusion and representation and consideration of everyone. And I think when the thing that I've noticed is that when wanting to tackle those types of subjects, something that people seem to rush to do is to sort of point out what's wrong or what's missing. And don't get me wrong, I think there's a space for that. There's definitely a necessity for that. But it's definitely interesting what you're doing, which is taking a much more positive approach and looking at, as you say, looking at positive examples of inclusive practices that work, that are successful, that deliver that sense of consideration to everyone involved, and are sustainable and, you know, can continue. It's not like a sort of one and done thing. how important is it, do you think, to have that change of approach when wanting to make genuine long-term structural changes to the industry, so that one day it will be inclusive and representative of everyone?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's absolutely vital. My background's in social care as much as it is in the creative industries, and being a musician, and within the sort of social care world and the learning disability. I mean, that's where I first came across the inclusion movement, and I remember going to a 2-day conference in Blackpool. I was filming it, actually. I was filming because I had my own filmmaking business that was purely within the sort of world of learning disabilities and social care. And I hadn't really, although I'd always been, kind of a mind to be, kind of equitable and inclusive in my work, I'd never really come across the inclusion movement. This is going back 20 odd years now. And it was one of the best weekends I've ever had, the most impactful weekends I've ever had, because the sorts of conversations that are going on now within sort of the creative industries were happening around providing support for people. And this was sort of specifically looking at people with sort of significant additional support needs. And that the idea of how to make society inclusive, or provide inclusive support, open doors for people, open up opportunities for people where there were significant personal obstacles to overcome, or difficulties to overcome, and societal difficulties to combat, in order to just have ordinary everyday experiences, and where you're providing informed kind of support. And that stuff just absolutely stuck with me in a way. I mean, I met some incredible people from all around the world, and making that little short film with those people was, with that conference, was incredibly affecting. And although 20 years down the line, those conversations are still happening within the social care sector, to see them happening in other industries, with similar sort of focus points, is, the social care sector has changed. Support for people has changed. The world has moved on. It is deinstitutionalized in a way, that because of things like the inclusion movement, as much as anything else. And I see those sorts of conversations as being, can bring on some pretty seismic change. Now, the one of the key issues for me that we need to overcome is the culture of gatekeeping. I've had conversations this week with people who just closed the door in my face in an attempt to try and do some positive work in a different way, and the door closed on me, because it didn't fit with convention, and that happens fairly regularly. I'm not in any way wounded by that, but that's exclusion, and unwillingness to look at working differently. And I think this sort of conversation, the sorts of conversations that are happening in the conference that I went to in Leeds, and then the wider conversations that are happening in this context in the screen industry are really important. But there needs to be a willingness from the people that the keepers of the gates to be accepting of change, and exploring it, because if they just close the door to it, it'll never happen. If it doesn't come from the top, it won't happen in the meaningful way that you're describing you described in your question. That kind of what culture shift, and systems change, if you like, then there needs to be a willingness to embrace that. And the things are changing. I think grassroots, leading by example. That's why I love kind of working the way that we do, because we just get to say, well, you know, you can keep doing it that way, but we did it this way, and look how what the outcomes were. But it's vital conversation, you know. It's so important. It can't carry on the way that it is, you know, and bringing down some of those monolithic, impenetrable structures. Yeah, I'm all for that.
So am I. Steve, I think it's very important to say that since I've been working for the BFI Inclusion Department, working with you, getting to know you, getting to speak with you has been one of my favourite things. You're an incredibly inspirational person. On a personal level, you've given me a lot of really important advice and wisdom. And yeah, getting to have you on my channel and, you know, on this particular video series has been really great. So thank you very much for being so honest and so generous with your time. There will be people out there that are really interested in tape and what you do and what you've spoken about. How can interested people get involved? How can they get in touch with you?
Tape has got a pretty active Facebook page, and our website is pretty good. We're part of a cultural website linked with a Welsh cultural website called AM, which is fantastic. We've got a bunch of stuff on there people can go and check out. But yeah, go to our website and follow the links from there. There's plenty to discover. And thank you for your kind words. Getting to know you has been a real treat too. I am itching to know what happens next in your script, so get onto that. But crucially, what I always say to people when they come to the door is, I'm really keen to speak to people one-to-one and find out, you know, what they're interested in. And so, you know, send me an email, give me a call. I'm more than happy to speak to anyone. And if I can help, then all the better.
Definitely. We'll put links in the description to all of Tape's websites and social media and stuff.
Thanks,
and also, man. Screen Presence Podcast, where can people find that?
Yeah, on all the usual podcast networks. It should be up and about everywhere, and we are looking to launch it, or we are going to launch it at the end of festival as part of a new tape project called the One Movie Film Festival, which is a rolling film festival that will never end. We show one film at a time with a whole bunch of other stuff around it. And that's, again, it's a co-produced project, and the podcast is going to launch on the first day of that festival. So that's very exciting.
Very much so. And I heard rumours of a series too.
Yes, that's really exciting, and I'm itching to do it. And we will have you on as co-host for one of those. I've already got your name. It's on a spreadsheet, so that means it has to happen.
It means it's certified. It means it's going to happen.
It does, yeah.
And yeah, so we will put the links for all the various platforms that the podcast is on in the description. And yeah, guys, get involved if you like the sound of what Tape does, or you want to find out more. Check out the website, check out their social media, and as Steve said, send them an email. He wants to speak to you guys. He wants you guys to get involved. And yeah, I think, as you heard from his conversation with, from his reaching out to Jen, which got the BFI involved in his podcast, I think that's how a lot of things start, by reaching out to people. And yeah, it will definitely be worth your while to reach out to Steve and to Tape and to see what they're up to. So yeah, Steve, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed this conversation. And yeah, guys, this has been a great video. Let me know what you think of these videos. I'm really enjoying doing them. I want to do more of them. I want to try and speak to more and more people and talk about the stuff that not only interests you, but the stuff that I feel that we need to talk about in the film and TV and screen industries in general. It's a great place to do so. And as I said, I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, I will leave you guys. I'll say goodbye. And yeah, like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys later.